channel followers, a big welcome back to the Corporate Sustainability Education channel. We're your weekly series of education podcasts, and we stream a new one for you every Friday. Now, in this particular podcast, we thought rather than look at a project that you could be doing within your organisation, how about we look at you yourself? How about we look at recruitment within this particular space? Perhaps you're looking to move up the ladder, perhaps you want a new challenge, or perhaps you're somebody that doesn't even work in the sector but is considering doing so and would like to hear from someone who is a recruiter in their own right in this space. We're absolutely delighted that we've been able to get the expertise of the co-owner of a company called Climate 17, and his name is David Blake. Now, Climate 17 is a clean energy and environmental recruitment specialist business, and they're based in sunny Bournemouth by the beach on the south coast of England in the county of Dorset. David, we're really, really delighted that you could join us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, this marketplace, it's fair to say, it's moving at quite a pace now. And I know that you have been in this marketplace for some number of years. So would you say that it's fair now that organisations in both the public and the private sector are recruiting for roles that they've really never had within their organisations before? And would your role now be partly finding them the right candidate, yes, but also helping them in how they might manage and retain that particular, specialist person that they've got on board?
I think, to answer your question, yes, in short, we have to help organizations in a much broader sense than just purely finding a CV, because as you say, either the role is new to the organization or the role is something that's certainly become a greater priority to the organization in recent years. They've put a greater emphasis on getting it right. So they have to also then appeal to a market that's becoming more and more competitive. So our role as specialist recruiters starts at the very concept stage with some of our clients, where we're helping them formulate the role brief in relation to what's on the market and ensure that they understand what they're going into from the beginning, using our experience of doing this every day. And realistically, it's a very niche market. So we have to try and manage expectations throughout that process and ensure that as we go through the recruitment process, they've got all the tools and advice that we can give them to ensure that that person is a success. Because ultimately, if the person is a success, then that helps us achieve our goal of them growing their sustainability team or division within an organization, and allows us to continue to partner with them, because we are by default results driven. So if our result is a result in a person is a good person, then they're more likely to stay with that organization, and they're more likely to come back to us to use us again and to build a more partnership approach to working with them. So yeah, it's very involved, and perhaps more so than some other recruitment sectors, I would say sometimes.
Yes, and I guess when they take that person on board, they probably realise they're going into an area where their role is new, but then also they want to feel part of the team and part of what's going on. So yes, it's a very it's an area that needs a lot of thought, I think, now, and it's good that there are companies like yourself that can give that specialist advice, very much so. Now, David, as a company, I know that you are very active in the energy sector. So can we start by painting a picture of the various aspects of this marketplace and the opportunities within it?
Within energy and sustainability sectors, there's a number of niches and subsectors within those areas. So there are different market structures, dynamics within those sectors. But as a general whole, the revision on UK government targets and a drive towards net zero, setting objectives around 2030, reduction in the use of petrol and diesel cars and the introduction of EVs, all the way through to renewable energy generation targets for the UK economy. Things like that have really, over the last few years, driven a huge growth across the energy and sustainability sector. So what that's done is it's put an emphasis and a priority on those individuals that have expertise in that space, and it's made it really competitive because there's always been a skill shortage in these industries. And I've recruited in this market since 2007, and realistically, back then, environmental professionals were very hard to find, but the market was growing and it was very much a fledgling space. And what's happened, since then is that we are now in a place where it's very candidate driven. The individual now recognizes the importance their role plays in helping organizations not just be sustainable, but actually meet organizational strategic targets to become either net zero or carbon neutral, or whatever the phrase may be for the organization. And these people are pivotal to that. So what that's done is make them very sought after. It's meant that the salary and benefits packages that are on offer for these individuals has become super competitive, and it's gone up. Probably in the last 2 years there's been a steep rise in salaries. The boutique organizations are pressed to look at benefits, and they're also pressed to look at future career path and future structure, because that's become more and more critical to these individuals. So there's a lot more thinking to be done for these roles now than perhaps there was a few years back. So as a summary, the sector and the marketplace is now, I think, in demand. It's very much a growth sector, and so it should be, given everything that's going on with regards to the sort of climate change agenda.
In that case, with the salary increases, if you're somebody, say, that works within an organization, you're already on a salary, but in the last 2 years things have moved on. So are you seeing people having to move on to take advantage of those increases, or do you think organizations need to be thinking themselves whether they need to to think again about what they're paying these individuals to keep them?
I think to some extent it depends on the situation and the organization itself. But one of the things we've seen a lot more organizations ask for is market intelligence. And one of the services that we do provide is becoming a little bit more popular now, is summary salary surveys. And given we've got a sort of whole of market, quite holistic approach on different aspects within maybe sustainability markets or the solar PV market or the onshore wind market, we were able to provide targeted salary surveys, and we've seen that help organizations benchmark themselves against the wider market. But if somebody is dissatisfied with their current package, package and salary is just one aspect of a role, and I think that really it's not the only reason to look to move on. It's about, certainly in these industries, it should really be about making the biggest impact you can and trying to drive change and make an impact on the organization's carbon footprint. And I think realistically, people might look to move to make a bigger impact, but sometimes it then just comes down to a question of value. And if the organization doesn't value you as an employee doing something quite important and critical, then they probably don't value or truly sort of respect their own agenda to drive a low carbon business forward. So I think it's sort of double-edged in some respects. And I think as well, with regards to salary, you can always find more money elsewhere, I think, if you look hard enough. And I think really it's there are people out there that will pay more money, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. So I think, in fairness, organizations that we work with tend to try and find a very balanced view on creating long-term career opportunities and growth and development for people, but as well, I think, pay fairly and pay well within the sector.
The era that I've come through my working career, there was a lot of years where really it was all about the salary, it was all about the numbers at the end of the day. But there's been a big shift that I've seen myself in, as you quite rightly pointed out, that people are valuing a lot of other things now just beyond the salary. And I think that's really good. It's good for businesses and it's good for them. With that said, we're quite intrigued really to know if you've agree with us really that a lot of the people that work in this space have a very different mindset because they're looking at the environment. They do tend to think differently to a lot of other people in other roles.
Yeah, I think, question of mindset's interesting. I think it's about a sense of purpose in their role. I think typically when people go through that sort of educational choice back in, a degree or when they're at college or whatever it may be, they make a conscious choice to learn more about how to help organizations be more sustainable, or learn about energy efficiency or renewable energy or whatever it may be. And I think they've done that because, one, it interests them and it's an area that they probably, have an affinity with, either in their sort of personal life because they like to choose to live sustainably, or two, because, like I say, it's an interest or a passion of theirs. And I think, you know, a lot of people are purpose driven in this market. And I think, as I said before, if they can make a bigger impact in another role, it's not always about how much more money they'll get. It's actually about how they'll develop their knowledge and skill set, and how much they will make a bigger impact in what they're doing in terms of that environmental impact as well. So I think that in this sector, yeah, professionals are generally purpose driven, and it is a running theme. But that's not to say they're not like that in other industries, of course. It's just to say that genuinely there's the roles that these people are in are usually centered around purpose driven, carbon reduction led targets. So it's very much, they have to be passionate and enthusiastic and motivated to help achieve those goals, and by default feel a sense of reward and achievement within their own role beyond that of a financial one. And I think that's why why we have to talk to them as recruiters on a much, on multiple levels beyond just salary and impact. It has to be about, what their personal objectives are in a career sense. Where do they see themselves? What types of organizations do they build an affinity with in their careers and feel that they can perhaps be most successful in? And their success as sustainability professionals should genuinely lead to, helping the UK, the organisation, the UK economy, or whoever it may be that they're working for, to actually meet their objectives from a net zero perspective.
I remember, in the early days, from, again, I go back to my own career, but there was a certain amount of respect and kudos for somebody that stayed within an organisation for a number of years. Then I saw many years later a real opposite shift to that, whereby it was almost frowned upon. What's wrong with you if you want to stay in that job for tens of years or whatever? Why aren't you out there getting other positions? That really fascinated me. So I'm quite interested to ask the question that in these particular job roles, is it ones that people are looking to stay in long term, or do they like to have new challenges to move on and help other organizations achieve what they may have within that particular company? Or are these jobs also maybe more often than not contracted, so there is a definite time frame to their position within the company?
Well, I think the whole sort of contract or interim space is interesting, and there is actually there is a market for that across energy and environmental sectors. I think specifically renewable energy, when it comes to maybe operations and maintenance, or the construction of renewable energy plants, whether it's wind farms or solar or whatever it may be, and there's an obvious need for contract staff in that space. But if you take the broader sort of renewable energy and sustainability sector as a whole, there tends to be pretty good longevity in it for people. I think sometimes people, after 2 to 3, 4 years plus, they sort of start to then look for something else. But there's always a very individual reason for that, and I think that it does depend on the person. But I would say that certainly people will take the job on the basis of the requirement of the role. So to give you some example on that, if an organization is looking for someone to hire them to help devise and implement a sustainability strategy, and start to see some results of that, that's not a job that can be done in 12 months and then they can go and leave. It's something that takes time to develop, to raise awareness of, to implement across an entire organization. No matter how big or small, really. So you can't see people taking that job on whole, hand on heart, saying they've done it and ready to move on to the next one within a short period of time. And there's lots of examples of that in the sector, where they've got a core requirement within the role to make an impact. And if they're trying to make an impact, whether that's within their own organization or as a consultant to help other organizations, as I say, you do have to demonstrate some longevity to really see some success in that role. So I would say that you do get good longevity in the sector. There's the obvious exception of the contract roles that are out there, but they're defined as such. And typically, people do stay around. So it makes it even more competitive because there's not lots of people jumping around, very quickly. People do see progression in the role, and actually that's probably why organizations are making improvements around the package, around the salary, and around the benefits that are on offer to these people, because as I say, they're not short-term tasks that they're looking to help organizations meet. They're looking at 10-year carbon offsetting or carbon footprinting targets they have to reduce. It could be an energy management strategy or an energy sustainability strategy for an organization that needs implementing and delivering. And that can be using energy efficiency technology or implementation of renewable energy and changing large organizations in the way they work. And I think some of that takes a long time, and people get motivated by that and want to see those jobs through. So sometimes when we, on the flip side, when we speak to people at those organizations, talking to them about other jobs, these are all the good reasons we get why they might not look to move right now. And actually that's why we, it's very hard to come, to counter that, because they're good reasons to stay, and they're good reasons to, to see that sort of project through, if you like.
What we find is that, the people that stay in these roles for longer, they really are building, they're building a reputation for themselves, but actually they're building the reputation of the business. And the way we often comment on the fact that they're nothing to do with marketing within the organization, and yet the perception of the company through the work that they're doing is incredible, and the knock-on effect from that. So yes, we find that the people that are there and they're known to be for that in that company, it's it really is a good win-win for the company that somebody does stay for longer, because it's all about reputation. It's for them, for their benefit, and for the companies. So we all understand that today companies are time poor and even resource poor. And then, of course, we're adding on this need to care about the environment within their remit. And I guess we're, probably looking at SMEs a lot here that haven't maybe got people in particular high level roles in this. But as a company, you take that on board by ensuring that you make the recruiting side of these expectations much simpler. And obviously you need a right first time goal. So could you tell us how you go about this?
I think you're right. I think, at the moment it's, especially coming out of pandemic, and, time is a scarce resource as much as, sometimes, additional finances are, for a lot of organizations, and they have to be very careful with spend. They have to be very careful with how they spend their time. And I think, that puts extra pressure on recruitment. And I think ultimately we have to spend a lot of time with our clients up front, and we have to really understand their needs and what's important to them, because getting it right first time is something that, if we really do work with an organization and understand that organization well, we're more likely to do. And actually it's about how much we can get from the client at the beginning. So I know it sounds quite, how do we save them time or spend more time with them? It sounds relatively contradictory, but actually in the long run of the recruitment process, a bad hire can cost you a lot of time. So there always has to be that initial investment, but at the same time, we do think that with our experience and our track record, we time again we've proven that it's a worthwhile investment in a time sense, because ultimately we do want people to get it right, and we do want to help them get it right. So there is there is a time expectation from us with clients, but we do spend a lot of time speaking to people off the back of that in the market that we think are right. And we definitely rule out as many people for roles as we rule in based on our interviewing of candidates in the market. So we spend a lot of time thereafter trying to get it right, and we've got a lot of experience in doing that. So once we understand the business properly, we can draw parallels to what we think is going to be right in the market, and I think generally that's fairly tried and tested from us, in terms of it working. And I think the right first time goal is a two-way thing. We have to work with clients have to work with us in the same way and buy into what we're doing, and it genuinely does work. And we feel that's important because we're not going anywhere. It's a niche sector, and we want to not only help them with one or two roles, we want to continue to partner with businesses as they grow. So for us, it's just as important long term as it is to them. And there's sometimes there's no silver bullet depending on the role as to how you solve that problem, but ultimately I think when we do work and partner with a business to understand their needs, we've got enough experience of different scenarios where we can help solve those problems. So I think it does help, having done it for a while, and the fact that we do this every day with our sort of ear to the ground on the market, it does give us an advantage, I'd say.
I mean, you have, as you said, you have a number of years' experience in these sectors, but also that said, you're a relatively young team of individuals, and I think that's great for people that are looking to recruit, because not only do you have the experience of recruiting people that are that much older, you also have what eludes some companies in what are younger people looking for as well. And I think that's very important because, as I say, a lot of companies don't really understand that. And that is a very different consideration, the people need to take into account. So I think it's great because, you do come at your support for companies in several different ways. So, David, our large corporations obviously have been recruiting these job roles, specific job roles, for a number of years. Largely to meet legislation, yes, but also to reap the many benefits that are clearly available. When you look at your energy management and your environmental management, and you and I know that only too well. But what does the job market look like at this level today with these big corporations?
Well, I think with the big corporations, I think you're right. Like it always used to be driven by compliance, meet certain objectives so you can avoid tax, and I think as time's gone on, and with online marketing, social media playing such a big part in everyone's lives, it's very hard for organizations to hide nowadays in terms of the way they are environmentally responsible, and their environmental behaviors can probably be very easily exposed in today's world. And I think that organizations now have evolved quite considerably, I think, to now proactively try and invest in demonstrating they're going above and beyond, not just to look good from a PR perspective, but probably just because I think to the clients that we work with, because there are organizational benefits from a staffing perspective, in terms of from staff that want to work for a purpose-driven organization, or an organization that is, let's say, very aware and understands and is actually helping support us in a climate crisis. And also they want to see that their organization is responsible for their actions. And I think that that's not just the responsibility of the energy or the sustainability manager anymore. I think that those days have gone, and I think the organizations recognize now that everyone, whether their role is centered around sustainability or not, everyone has an awareness of climate change, and everyone now wants to see their organization play a part in that. So it's so much bigger than what it was in an organizational sense, that just to do it for tax reasons isn't going to help them be a more successful organization. It's going to be more about them doing it for the good of all their staff, so that their staff buy into the fact the organization is doing it. But also, somewhere along the line, they've got to look at it and say, well, actually, we have got a huge carbon footprint. This is going to actually significantly help the environment, and it significantly reduce that carbon footprint from our change of behaviors. And they have to hold their hands up and accept that that is going to cost them. But actually, I think there'll be the value now of doing that outweighs the cost. It's just a longer term value, and it's seen in different ways, and it's less tangible to define it. But actually, I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that I've spoken to in recent weeks and months that probably could define it, I'm sure. But I think, in terms of the market at that level, yeah, these large blue chip organizations, we've worked with FTSE 100, Fortune 100, multinational organizations in the last few years, and you're right, we are a young company, but we'd like to think that we've got a lot of experience in doing this, and we've got a good track record of working from SMEs to large organizations. And the big difference with the large organizations is that the roles are rarer. They are harder to get in those bigger companies. But the challenge and I think the potential impact you can have is so much greater. We're helping one of the largest transport infrastructure companies in the world at the moment with a number of senior energy and sustainability roles, and there's some really big impacts that these roles can have on that organization. And they're not just being recruited by a division; they're being recruited centrally by, with a couple of rings below the board, and these organisations are very aware of the importance of this. So I think it's heightened the awareness of the importance of these roles, and it's also heightened the value of these roles in an organisation. So it's sort of reflective of what's happening further down with smaller businesses, but I still think there's a lot of businesses that aren't up there with some of these companies we're working with. There's still a lot of organizations that are a bit behind, but they're going to get left behind, and they're going to have to catch up at some point. So I think that's where we can, where we found we can help sometimes is, people have to hold their hands up and acknowledge that maybe they should have been doing this 12, 18 months ago, if not sooner. And actually, that's where we can come in, because we can speed the process up, from being an additional resource to what companies already have.
Start your step-by-step journey for your business. We keep saying this, you've heard it from the expert now. There's no time like now to start if you haven't started. This is really important. And when we are banging the drum, we do say to companies that are not already on board with this, no matter what your aspirations are for your particular business, it all lies in the people, your team that you have. And if you do get on board with this and you shout about the fact that this is important to you, you will recruit and attract the most motivated, talented people. And, obviously with your company that's working at the highest level with businesses, all the way to our SMEs, what you're saying makes, you're telling people the facts, and that's what we need to do. So are we seeing the professionals maybe at the highest level that you work in as well, they've been working for organizations and they've made a name for themselves in what they're achieving for these big organizations. So are we now seeing them being headhunted by industry sectors that realize now they need to be involved more in steering their client base in this direction? I guess we're sort of thinking about maybe banking, accountants, solicitors, maybe marketing people.
I think in short, the market has got to a point now where, the active job market's no longer enough to satisfy the demand. So I think in short, a lot of the work that we have to do is headhunting. I mean, it's a relatively, sort of sounds a bit scary and dated as a term, actually, headhunting, because, I think it used to be very much, phone up out of the blue, very sell. And actually, it's more about relationship building and networking than it is headhunting with people. Sorry. And I think, we spend a lot of time speaking to people that aren't always looking for jobs, but perhaps have that one or two job types that they'd always want to hear about. And I think what that means is we have to remember that, we have to record that, and when those jobs do come up, we go back to them and we do speak to them. But I think, really the sort of headhunting side of things and bringing people across to the sector is key and critical in its growth, and it's very much something that has to be done for us to meet the demand of clients. And I think, banking is, you mentioned banking is a really interesting one. I think, the sustainable finance market and banking is huge, and it's got huge potential because investing responsibly and sustainably is something that organizations, banks, investors, private equity need to be considering, I think, at all levels. And it's a very high growth area of the market, and looking at how that can be done more sustainably is one of the fastest growing areas that we're seeing right now. And I think that is something that is a must. And I think, taking people that have got a track record and bringing them to new organizations, sometimes that works for that person because, they've been and done that, they're not needed to perhaps make that big change in a way that had been done in their previous role. So they can come to a new challenge, having used their experience and trying to apply that to a new environment. And I think that does really work. So it does lend itself to a model of success, I think, for that new organization. And, the whole headhunting side of things, absolutely, it's key and critical to get the message out about new roles to people, because not everyone's looking at job adverts.
I know that's a very different scenario today as well, I'm sure, how people find people. And I'm showing my age for them by saying headhunted. That's quite an aggressive term, isn't it, really? I'm wondering as well whether British professionals are being looked at to go and work overseas, given what they've been doing in this country, or perhaps our British professionals looking to go overseas where maybe more is being achieved in certain countries, or maybe where less is being achieved, and they want to make some changes there.
I think it's a factor, but I think it becomes a very personal one, certainly when it comes to sustainability, because I think, industry in the UK is making, steady progress, and I think there's lots of scope and opportunity in the UK sustainability market. So there's less compliance in certain countries abroad sometimes, and I think some of these countries are a little bit behind us, actually. So they see a value in perhaps pioneering with a market leader. Certainly, if you take renewable energy, for example, the UK have, in an offshore wind sense, one of the best, offshore wind markets in the world. So, there are, emerging markets where those skills and expertise, like Taiwan or further international markets, where those skill sets could be well received and perhaps greatly valued. But again, that comes down to the individual. So we're not seeing that we're losing lots of people internationally necessarily, but certainly no more than we're gaining from people coming from international, countries, if you like, as well, because obviously there's an element of the reverse where there are, maybe EU nationals that are now, with a settlement status in the UK that have been here for many years now and have really contributed value. And there's lots of contacts and of mine that are in that category, really. And I think that, I wouldn't say it was a big trend at this moment in time, but that's not to say it doesn't change, because, as you know, it's heavily subsidy and legislation driven. And if there are opportunities internationally, you start to see that sort of trend in a sort of 12-18 month cycle. But at the moment, I think from a sustainability perspective, it seems that the UK there's plenty of work to do, and it's certainly the place to be for people in that space.
Yeah, and I must admit, it's lovely to meet people in this industry sector from other countries, and that sharing of knowledge and working together is what we all need now. It's what our businesses need, it's what our planet needs. So I think this sharing of knowledge and working in other countries and them coming here to work is just invaluable. I know that we've both alluded to this throughout our conversation, David, but I did just want to come back to specifically looking at SMEs and wondering if you're seeing a real upsurge in them getting on board with this, and an interest in them contacting you. And I wonder if there was ever a point where that wasn't happening and maybe you were contacting them and saying, do you know that this is important?
Yeah, and I think the SME space is really interesting, and I think it really depends on the business. From our perspective, I think there's lots of things an SME can do. Whether they need a professional full time to do that is another question. But I think it's certainly worth being aware of the steps that you could take as a small business. We're a small business, although yes, we work in the sector as recruiters. We don't have somebody that just leads and looks after our sustainability and environment and energy side of things, but we try to make sure that we are responsible, and there are small steps that we can take to do that. And I think that every SME should look at that. But at the same time, I think the SME market will evolve to a point where there will be sustainability requirements and energy management or sustainability requirements for people within smaller businesses, more and more so. And I think it's about being ready for that and being open to that and seeing what advantages of that could bring to your business. Yes, we work with multinational companies, but yes, we can also help small businesses that want to recruit at any level sustainability professionals. And I think that there is an appropriate fee structure and cost associated to any of those things, and they are obviously very different. And I think that we can give some direction and guidance on that. And there might be that some of it sometimes then outsourced to a company to maybe do some consultancy work. And again, it's something that we've sort of maybe found them a consultant to do a project to help them devise a strategy, or to add some value in a sustainability sense in another way. So again, all of these options are possible. From our perspective, we work with a number of SMEs from 5-6 person companies upwards, really. But some of those 5-6 person companies tend to be, yes, admittedly sort of small sustainability environmental businesses in a way. But as I say, we don't discount at any level, because for us it's about using our skills and expertise to bring value to their business. And I think in a recruitment sense, I think we've got a good experience of doing that. And it doesn't really matter, as I say, if you're one of the biggest companies in the world or the smallest. It's more about the sector and the purpose of the role and what your objective is.
We work quite closely with a company. It's a 2-man company, and they're working with British Gas. They're working with huge universities. There's no, just because a small business doesn't mean they're not making great strides in many different areas. I was wondering if you, as an organisation, ever get an insight to the education of young professionals that are coming through today.
We do get, a lot of young professionals come to us, whether they're currently studying or they've just graduated. And it's really interesting, because I think there's lots of opportunities from a graduate scheme perspective now, depending on the location and the specific skill set that you've got, where people can get into the industry. And we, as a specialist recruiter, it's very hard for us to help place graduates, because people come to us to help them usually find more experienced professionals. And we do sometimes get graduate roles where we've got a good relationship with clients, but it's not a core thing for us. So what we tend to do is provide some just basic advice of where to look, because I think that's half the battle sometimes for graduates. And I tend to advise going to industry bodies. So for example, if you work in renewable energy, looking at Renewable UK and their website for graduate and internship opportunities, because they're really good at that, and they're invested in building the growth of that industry. We do think that there's some really innovative graduate schemes out there, but from our perspective, we might work with those clients, but we tend not to get involved in the graduate scheme. It's a separate way of recruiting that people usually do. And I think the young people coming into the sector, I think and I hope is growing and will continue to do so, because it's really important that it does. But for me personally, I think we try to give them as much advice as we can, just to point them in the right direction, and hope that they start to get a foothold in the industry, because that's really critical for the growth of the market.
Yeah, and it must be flipping it on its head then, really quite interested to know, say for example somebody is looking to get into the energy sector or the environmental management sector, and maybe they've got certain skill sets but they'd like to retrain. Do you know if there are any initiatives out there for retraining people?
Yeah, there are, and I think it depends on what it is that you specifically want to go and do. And as I said, whilst we don't necessarily have lots of demand from our clients for this type of sort of transitional skills, we certainly do get inquiries, and we do try and give guidance. And I think in terms of the specifics, as I say, it would depend if you wanted to work in sustainability, or you wanted to get some accreditations around low carbon buildings, or you wanted to transition towards renewable energy, wind, solar development, or whatever it may be. It would depend. But I said that the best starting point is looking at, for example, the Energy Institute, Renewable UK, IEMA is very good. They're all very helpful industry bodies that would be able to point to. They've got sections on their websites for courses, for career development, and for helping professionals get into the space. And I think that's a good starting point for anybody. And I think once you've started to do that, it might help also you decide, because you might not know specifically what area you want to go into. It might help you refine that a little bit. And I think there are specific individuals in those businesses that are there to help future careers in this sector, and that's their sole job. And I think those people are the ones to dig out, speak to, and try and get as much information as you can to make that decision.
Yes, and that's why, really why we embarked on this education channel, because it's a very soft way of being able to, get your knowledge up to a certain extent, to then have the confidence, I think is the word really we go for, the confidence to talk to other people. If you're working within a company, maybe you've got to talk to people that hold the budgets, that sort of thing. It's just a way of softly getting your way up. And you could be on the way home from work with your headphones on, or you could sit in the evening or whatever and listen to it. But there's so much advice out there, isn't there, online, and with these institutions, like you say. And we've done a series of podcasts on this channel with IEMA, and well, that is just fantastic what is on offer. So just have a look around. It's there for you. So I'd really like to know what you think, what you would say to someone that's looking for a career in either energy or environmental management.
In short, I'd say go for it. And second, I'd say have a clear idea about what it is specifically you want to do within the space, whether that's implementing ISO 14001 from an environmental management perspective, whether that's help organizations reduce their carbon footprint from a sustainability strategy perspective, whether that's develop, design, build, or operate renewable energy systems. All of those different niches within what is a very broad sector, and there's many more niches. Decide for yourself which direction you want to go for, and start to then work backwards from there as to the steps you need to take as an individual to get there, because there will be steps, whether it's educational steps, whether it's sometimes it's jobs. Sometimes you have to take a job in order to end up with a job you want, or maybe sometimes 2 or 3. And I think sometimes that's a plan that people need to appreciate, is that you can't just jump to the end result. There has to be steps along the way, whatever that may be. And I think so I would say be prepared to be patient, and eventually it's possible. So it does depend on the route that you want to take, of course, but go for it is my advice. I'd say look into it, plan and research it, and the rest will start to fall into place. The sustainability space is increasing year on year at the moment, I would guess, in terms of other sectors. And I think there's no reason why that isn't going to continue at the moment due to the demand. The sustainability sector now is really being recognized in its own right as a standardized role or function within an organization, and something that's not only that, but is probably as key or as critical as a in-house finance manager or an operations or HR professional. It's almost sort of part of the organizational structure now as a given. And I don't think that was always the case. So all of that sort of lends itself to salaries, starting to go up and value going up accordingly.
In the years that we've been working in this space and the very many people that we've met at very different levels, it's fair to say that people find this a very rewarding industry sectors to be in. People have great careers, and I think, well, we're all involved in it. So there's, we obviously see why you should work in this area. And something that's not really a question to you, David, but just an observation that I found is we've been invited into several different universities to see where they've created new buildings, or maybe they've worked on their existing buildings, and the work that they're doing in sustainability and making these buildings very environmentally friendly is incredible. But the other thing that they're doing that I've noticed is they're creating the most inspiring places for young people to study. They have the most incredible furniture. Everything about it is very funky, colourful, exciting, vibrant, makes you want to be there and to learn. And then I wonder, you're going to go into a brown office or something, I just think maybe there's another way that companies need to be looking at. And I think some are the working space, but then, we can't really do anything about that at the moment. It is what it is. And, a lot of people aren't even going to be going to a workspace, are they, in the foreseeable future? So anyway, I just thought that was an observation that I just wanted to put in there in this podcast to companies that might be listening. I'm very interested for you to share the answer to why you came about the name Climate 17.
First of all, we wanted something that was relatively unique.
Great.
You touched on bold and office environments and things like that, modern and things like that. And we wanted a lot of that to reflect in who we were as a business. But Climate 17 comes initially from the UN Sustainable Development Goals, of which there are 17. Mm-hmm. So, and we did that just to underpin the fact that we are trying to support a sustainable world, a sustainable economy, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals was a really good sort of foundation for us to sort of base our business around, because it's a broad sector, there's a broad number of goals there, and I think we should try and reflect that in our name. So we came up with Climate 17 for that very reason.
I really like it. I think it's great, and like you say, stands out. And good for you for coming up with such a great name. And I know that you're not just talking the talk, you're also walking the walk. You've got new premises underway, you're really thinking about every environmental aspect of your own working environment, and it's inspiring that you're doing that as well. So David, thank you very much. That's been enlightening, inspiring, and I think our careers are very important to us as individuals, and I think this is an important topic to cover on this podcast, especially to highlight the amazing work that you and your team are doing. You can meet David and his team at the big Sustainability Expo at St Mary's Stadium on the 28th of October, Southampton. So, go along, meet them and have some one-to-ones with these guys. They know a lot and they can really help you. And you're going to be with a lot of like-minded people in that space as well. Now, we will be including a video, a link to the website, should I say, for Climate 17 with this video. So do please click onto their website, find out a bit more about them, and do get in touch with them, ask your questions, and it's the only way is up, and enjoy the career that you're already in, or enjoy a new career in this space, because it is quite incredible and it's growing apace and it's very much needed. So David, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.